altitude, altitude. altitude, altitude.
Hello and welcome to this training course on the FA-18C. These interactive training lessons are a supplement to the manual and will provide a hands-on means of learning this aircraft. Whilst learning the F-18 may seem a daunting task at first, these lessons are broken down into small chunks to allow you to better absorb the material. Before we start the first lesson though, I wanted to take a few moments to review some of the basic instruments and basic laws of flying an aircraft. I currently have the aircraft box. Press spacebar to continue.
For basic flight maneuvers, your most important instrument will be the heads-up display, or HUD. The HUD consists of two glass panels that are used to display projected information. The HUD is located between the top of the instrument panel and the canopy bow. Let's talk about its most important information. Horizontally along the top of the HUD is the heading tape with the heading marker in the center. The marker in relation to the tape indicates your current heading. The boxed number on the left side of the HUD is your calibrated airspeed, and the box on the right side is your barometric or radar altitude. Above the altitude box is your vertical velocity. In the center of the HUD is the pitch ladder that indicates your positive or negative pitch angle to the horizon line. In the center of the pitch ladder is the velocity vector that, when uncaged, shows the flight vector of your aircraft when it's not flashing. In other words, you will fly to the point your velocity vector is on, unless it is flashing. Along the left side of the HUD is a data block of 4 values. The top is your angle of attack. Below that is your airspeed as Mach. Next is current G. And at the bottom is the peak G. Along the bottom of the HUD is a bank angle indicator. Press spacebar to continue. There are 3 primary controls that you will use to fly. These are the control stick, throttles, and rudder pedals. The control stick controls pitch and roll. Push and pull back on the stick to lower and raise the nose of the aircraft. If thrust is constant though, you lose speed as you climb and gain speed as you dive. To roll the aircraft, push the stick to the left or right. By rolling the aircraft and then pulling back on the stick, you turn the aircraft. To control thrust, you use the left and right engine throttles. When you select the maximum throttle setting, the afterburners are selected. While these provide great thrust, they also consume fuel quickly. To move the nose of your aircraft laterally side to side, use left and right rudder pedals. You will also use the rudder pedals to steer the aircraft when you taxi using nose wheel steering. Press spacebar to continue. Ahead of you is a series of gates that you will fly through to practice flying. A few things to keep in mind. First, try to keep your airspeed between 250 and 400 knots. Second, be careful to not over-control the aircraft with large, rapid control movements. Use smooth control inputs. Third, fly the aircraft to place the velocity vector on the HUD in the center of the next gate. Fourth, the faster you are, the wider your turns will be. Avoid getting too fast so you can make the turn to the next gate. Press spacebar when you are ready to start. While we strongly recommend a joystick, you can also fly with a keyboard using pitch, up and down arrows, roll, left and right arrows, thrust, page up and page down, yaw, X and Y. any point of a lesson, you can press the pause key. This can be useful if you need more time to read the text or step away. To look around the cockpit, you can use the keyboard. View up, keypad 8, view down, keypad 2, view left, keypad 4, view right, keypad 6, zoom in, keypad asterisk, zoom out, keypad /.
Altitude. 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 Altitude.
In this lesson, we're starting in an up and running F-A-18, and we will learn how to taxi to the runway and take off. Before we taxi out though, let's set up a few more items that we did not cover in the cold start lesson. Press spacebar when ready.
During low-light operations like this evening, place the landing and taxi light switch in the up-on position. Now, set up your position, formation, and strobe lights as you desire. The formation lights, or slime lights, are low-intensity green lights that aid in close-in formation flying. Position lights are red and green lights that mark the left and right sides of the aircraft, and the strobe are two flashing red lights on the tail. When done, press spacebar. Time to set up your internal lights. The instrument dial controls instrument panel lighting. The console dial controls the lighting on the left and right consoles. The flood dial illuminates the forward section of the cockpit. And the chart dial controls lighting of your lap area. The lights test switch will test all cockpit warning and caution lights. The warn caution dial allows you to adjust the illumination of those lights. The mode switch allows you to select default internal lighting for day, night, and night vision goggle use. Experiment with these and press spacebar when ready to move on. On the altimeter, rotate the pressure setting knob with the mouse wheel to set an airfield pressure elevation of 29.90 atmospheric pressure. Press spacebar when it's set. To steer when taxiing, we will use the nose wheel steering, or NWS, by pressing the S key, or the NWS button on the control stick. When engaged, as indicated by the NWS indication on the bottom right portion of the HUD, rudder inputs will steer the aircraft left and right. When the NWS button is held down, nose wheel steering high, or NWS high, is enabled and allows a tighter turn radius. This is quite helpful in a crowded carrier jet. Press spacebar to continue. To get rolling, slowly increase the throttles until you have forward movement, but do not exceed 75% engine RPM. Press Z to steer left and X to steer right. Taxi forward to the runway directly ahead. Keep taxiing forward and practice both normal NWS and NWS high steering. Come to a halt just short of entering the runway by using the toe brakes at the top of the rudder pedals. Before entering the runway, arm the ejection seat by moving the ejection seat safe armed handle on your right in the down position so that the armed label becomes visible. Also, tighten your restraints. Check left and right for traffic. Increase engine RPM and enter the runway. Once on the runway, align the aircraft down the center line and come to a halt on the 25 runway heading marker. Press spacebar to continue.
On the right DDI, confirm that the stab position is set to 12 for both stimulators. While holding down the wheel brakes, increase engine RPM to 80% and check that temps on the IFEI do not exceed 800 degrees centigrade. In an F-18C, you always take off an afterburner. Release the brakes and push the throttles all the way forward to full afterburner.
As you roll down the runway, keep aligned down the middle with very small rudder inputs. Raise the landing gear by moving the landing gear control handle in the up position. Then, raise the flaps by setting the flap switch to the up auto position. Congratulations! You have just taken off. You can end the lesson now by pressing the escape key. In previous lessons, we learned how to take off and navigate, but what goes up must come down. In this lesson, we'll go over the basics of landing at an airfield in visual flight rules conditions using a straight-in approach. This will also be useful for the later instrument flight rules landing lesson. I currently have the lesson paused as I want to first outline the basics of an airfield VFR straight-in approach. Before flying this lesson, please make sure you are familiar with the HUD symbology as described in the manual and first lesson. Press spacebar to continue.
We will start the approach 11 miles out at 3,000 feet barometric and 260 knots on approach to runway 07 Equipoleti. Once at 5 miles, you will be at 1,500 feet, and this will place you on a 3-degree glide path to the runway. To measure your glide path angle, reference your velocity vector on the HUD in relation to the pitch ladder. A 3-degree flight path is standard for an FA-18 landing. For a straight-in approach, we will keep the HUD showing barometric altitude. This will also be true for IFR landings.
After the lesson is unpaused, reduce your throttle to idle and fly through the gates ahead. Once your airspeed is below 250 knots, lower the landing gear by moving the landing gear control handle down. Do this by left-clicking the handle or by pressing the G key. Also lower the flaps to fold down by moving the flap switch in the down fold position, either by left-clicking on the switch twice or pressing left control F. Once the gear and flaps are down, keep flying through the gates and get the aircraft to an on-speed angle of attack. This is the proper AOA that will achieve the correct hook angle to catch the target wire of the carrier. You will want an angle of attack of 8.1 degrees, which will place the velocity vector on the HUD in the center of the E bracket. Additionally, your angle of attack target of 8.1 degrees is indicated by the AOA indexer lights to the left of the HUD frame. When at the on-speed AOA, the center yellow circle will be illuminated. Use the throttle to adjust your glide path and pitch trim to adjust AOA when the flaps are down. Use the first part of this flight to practice stabilized on-speed flight. Press spacebar to continue. When you're ready, press spacebar and I will unpause the lesson. Being below 250 knots, go ahead and lower your landing gear and drop the flaps to full. Reduce your airspeed by setting the throttles to idle. You may also wish to extend your speed brake by using the speed brake switch on the right throttle grip or by pressing left shift B to get slower more quickly. Note the SPD BRK light on the instrument panel when the speed brake is extended. As you slow below 140 knots, retract the speed brake by using the speed brake switch or pressing left control B. Adjust the throttle and stick trim to maintain 8.1 degrees of angle of attack. Velocity vector inside the E bracket. Use the gates as a reference for your glide path by keeping the velocity vector in the center of the next gate. At this point, you should be on speed with an angle of attack of 8.1 degrees, indicated by the velocity vector in the center of the E bracket on the HUD. Use throttle input to adjust your glide path such that the E bracket is positioned over the runway threshold. Use pitch trim to keep on-speed AOA. You should now be on a 3-degree glide path down the runway. Maintain on-speed AOA, and your glide path should be aligned with the runway threshold. Maintain on-speed AOA and fly the aircraft onto the runway with a vertical velocity of no more than 750 feet per minute, as displayed over the HUD altitude indication. Do not flare. Once the nose wheel comes down, use the rudder to keep the aircraft centered down the runway, and use the wheel brakes to bring her to a halt. Well done. You can end the lesson now by pressing the escape key.
Welcome to this train lesson on the use of the F-18's M61A2 20mm cannon. Mounted in the nose of the aircraft, it can be loaded with up to 578 rounds and has a firing rate of either 4,000 or 6,000 rounds per minute. When too close for missiles, the gun is a great option in a dogfight. I currently have the lesson paused as we talk about the air-to-air gun system. Press spacebar to continue.
To start, let's first get the AA gun set up. The easiest way to do this is by simply pressing aft on the weapon select switch, or press left shift and X. Please do so now. With the AA gun selected, note that the master mode was automatically set to AA. The left DDI displays the AA gun format, the HUD is in the gun auto acquisition mode, and the right DDI is in the AA radar page with air combat maneuvering mode selected. Let's first take a closer look at the AA gun format page on the left DDI. Above the wing form, you see the number of gun rounds remaining, 578, and below that you see the state of the master arms switch. On the left side of the page, you have the gun round type selection of M50 or PGU-28. You want to make sure that this selection matches what you have loaded on the aircraft. Press the M50 push button to select M50 rounds. In the bottom of the left format are push buttons for high and low gun fire rate. Low fires the gun at 4,000 rounds per minute and high fires the gun at 6,000 rounds per minute. Select the high option. With no radar lock on the target, you will use the lead computing optical sight, also called the funnel. Simply put, with a wingspan entered, you will fly to place the wingtips of the target's aircraft just touching the sides of the funnel. When they are, you have a good firing solution to hit the target. To enter the correct target wingspan, press the UFC push button. Our target aircraft will be a MiG-29 with a wingspan of approximately 37 feet. The top option select window is marked WSPN for wingspan. Press the option select button to the left. This will allow us to enter a target wingspan. On the UFC keypad, type in 37 and then press enter on the UFC keypad. Press spacebar when done. With that done, you will now note that the WSPN or wingspan indication in the top right portion of the AA gun format page displays 037 to the right. Now let's take a look at the HUD. Currently, you are in the gun auto acquisition mode. This is indicated by the large dashed circle on the HUD. Also note that the selected weapon, gun, indicated near the bottom center of the HUD, and the number of rounds remaining below it. To lock up a target, simply fly to place your target within 5 miles inside the dashed circle. Until you have a target locked though, you can use the gun funnel. In addition to the gun auto acquisition mode, you also have the bore sight BST, vertical VACQ, and wide WACQ air combat maneuvering ACM modes. But we will talk about those in a separate lesson. When you are ready, press spacebar and I will unpause the lesson. Ahead of you are two drone MiG-29s. Place them within the dashed circle on the HUD to lock one of them up. Upon doing so, you now have some new information on the HUD for a locked target. You have your VC closure, velocity, and target range below it on the right side of the HUD. The locked target has a target designation box or diamond around it, and an aiming reticle with a pipper in the center. Along the outside of the aiming reticle is a line that indicates maximum gun range. Fly to place the pipper in the center of the aiming reticle over the target and pull the trigger when the target is within range. When the pipper is over the target and within range, a shoot cue will appear over the target. To unlock the target, press the undesignated button on your stick, or press S. Good job. Now splash the second drone. Splash 2. Great job using the AA gun. This is a great weapon in close and when Winchester on missiles. Press escape to end the lesson. In this lesson, we'll learn about how to use the AIM-9L and M versions of the venerable Sidewinder short-range infrared guided air-to-air missile. Using a cooled infrared seeker, the Sidewinder locks onto the hot elements of a target, most often the engines. Best used in close-range dogfights, the Sidewinder is a fire and forget after launch. However, the Sidewinder can be decoyed by flares and is less effective against ground clutter. Today we're looking at the L and M versions. The AIM-9L, or Lima, entered production in 1977 and was the first all-aspect homing Sidewinder, meaning it could get a lock on a target at any aspect angle. However, a rear aspect provides much better detection. The Mike, or AIM-9M, is an improved version of the Lima with better flare rejection and a reduced smoke motor. In a later lesson, we'll take a look at the AIM-9X and the joint helmet-mounted cueing system. The Sidewinder can be used on both bore sight mode and slaved to a radar-locked target. I currently have the lesson paused as we discuss some of its features. To select a Sidewinder, press down on the weapon select switch or press left shift and S. Do this now. When selected with no target locked on radar, the Sidewinder will be in bore sight mode. This is indicated by the single reticle on the HUD that indicates the seeker line of sight. Below on the HUD, you will notice the name of the weapon, 9M in this case, and the number of missiles remaining to the right. To employ a Sidewinder in this mode, fly to place the reticle over a target and wait for the seeker tone to change to a higher pitch. This indicates the seeker sees and is tracking the target. You could then launch the missile by pulling the trigger or pressing the spacebar. To allow the seeker to self-track the target, press the cage-uncage button on your throttle or press C when you hear the lock tone. Once self-tracking, the seeker will automatically follow the target within its seeker field of regard. Before trying this though, let's first take a closer look at the AIM-9 format page on the left DDI. Press spacebar to continue. As with the AA gun, you have the remaining gun rounds and master arm indications. Along the wing form are indications for AIM-9 loading. 9L indicates stations with AIM-9L, and 9M indicates stations with AIM-9M. The selected station includes an SEL for selected below it. To cycle through AIM-9 stations, press the AIM-9 select switch on the weapon select switch, or press left shift S. This allows you to switch between AIM-9L and AIM-9M versions. When you are ready, press spacebar and I will unpause the lesson. You now have two MiG-29 drone targets ahead of you. Fly to place the reticle over one of them until you hear a higher-pitched block tone. You can either launch an AIM-9 now by pressing the trigger on the stick or spacebar on the keyboard, or initiate a self-track by pressing the cage-uncage button on the throttle or pressing C. Once self-tracking, launch an AIM-9. It may take more than one to bring down the MiG. Splash 1. Keep an eye on the second MiG-29 and follow it. We will use a radar slaved track for that one. Follow the second drone. To lock up the second drone on radar, press up on the sensor select switch or press right alt and semicolon. This will place the radar in air combat maneuvering or ACM mode. Keep following the second drone. When ACM mode is first selected, the bore sight auto acquisition mode is selected. This is indicated by the dashed circle on the HUD. To lock up the target, fly to place the target within the dashed circle and have the target under 10 miles away.
Altitude. Altitude.
Fly to keep the target at about 1 mile to keep the radar locked. On the HUD is a large, solid circle that acts as both the AIM-9 allowable steering error circle and as the normalized in-range display, or NERD circle. Fly to keep the small steering dot inside the circle to give the missile the best chance of reaching the target. Along the outside of the circle are 2 triangle NERD indications. The one at the 6 o'clock position is the missile maximum range, also called RMAX, and the other is the missile minimum range, called RMIN. The line inscribing the circle indicates target range, and you want this between RMAX and RMIN to launch the missile. Also on the HUD is a box or diamond that indicates the line of sight to the locked target, and the smaller circle indicates the AIM-9 seeker line of sight. If you see a large X across the HUD, the range to the target is less than the minimum range indication. When the target is between RMAX and RMIN, the steering dot is inside the ASE circle, and the weapon is armed. The shoot cue will appear, and you can launch the missile by pulling the trigger. Nice job, you downed the second drone. Some final thoughts on using the AIM-9. First, the seeker can better track a target from behind than in front. Second, if the target is expending flares, it may decoy your missile. Third, the AIM-9 does not have a large warhead, so it may take more than one to bring down a target. Press escape to end the lesson. In this lesson, we'll explore employment of the Advanced Medium Range Air-to-Air Missile, or AMRAAM. The AMRAAM replaced the older AIM-7 Sparrow with improved range, guidance, weight, and an embedded radar seeker in the nose cone. This allows the AMRAAM to guide on target without support from the host aircraft as the missile closes with the target. This in turn allows the launch aircraft to maneuver without loss of missile guidance to the target. The AMRAAM can be cued to target with the radar, or it can be launched at a close range just using the missile's seeker. Deliveries of the AIM-120B began in 1994 and replaced the AIM-120A. The AIM-120C was fielded in 1996 and has clipped wings to support internal storage, improved target detection, and greater range. As with all air-to-air missiles, engagement range is highly dependent on engagement aspect, launch altitude, and launch speed. You will see much greater launch distances at 30,000 feet on a closing target than 5,000 feet on a receding target. I currently have the lesson paused. To select the AMRAAM, press right on the weapon select switch or press left shift and D. Let's first take a look at the AMRAAM format page on the left DDI. In the top left corner of the DDI, at push button 6, is the size selection. By pressing on the push button, you have selections to set weapon fusing size to small, medium, and large sized targets. We'll be shooting down some drone MiG-29s, so select small. To the right of the size selection is the radar cross section or RCS selection. Upon pressing this push button, you have options to set the expected radar cross section of the target between small, medium, and large. Go ahead and set it to small. Along the right side of the DDI at push button 13 is the step push button. Successive presses cycle the selected AIM-120 stations. You can see AIM-120 loading on the wing form with AB for AIM-120B and AC for AIM-120C. The selected rail stations include the SEL indicator and dual rail stations with indications for right and left rail on the station. Press spacebar to continue. When we selected the AIM-120, we also set the radar on the right DDI to the AIM-120 default settings. These include a range scale of 40 miles, a 2-bar scan, an azimuth of 140 degrees, and an interleaved PRF. Let's keep these as is. Press spacebar to continue. The large dashed circle is the most obvious indication of AMRAAM selection. This indicates the seeker field of view if launched with no radar lock first. This is termed Mad Dog launch, and the AMRAAM will lock on to intercept the first target it detects within the dashed reticle area out to 10 miles. Below the dashed reticle is the designation for the selected weapon, AB for AIM-120B and AC for AIM-120C. Below that is a visual indication, meaning there is no radar lock, and if launched now, the missile would be in Mad Dog mode. Press spacebar and I'll add some drone targets. On the right DDI radar page, we see a target, or called a hit, on the radar. Let's lock it up by moving the Throttle Designator Controller, or TDC, over it and locking it up. We do this by using the TDC switch on the throttle or by pressing period, comma, backslash, and semicolon to slew it. Once the two vertical bars of the TDC are over the hit, press down on the TDC switch or press the enter button. Once the target is locked, press spacebar to continue. With the target locked up, some new information is now available on the HUD. On the HUD is a large, solid circle that acts as both the AIM-120 allowable steering error circle and as the normalized in-range display or NERD circle. Fly to keep the small steering dot inside the circle to give the missile the best chance of reaching the target. Along the outside of the circle are three triangle NERD indications. The one at 6 o'clock position is the missile maximum range, also called RMAX. Counterclockwise from it is the no escape range, also called RNE. When target range is within RNE, the target could change course and the missile would still have the energy to reach the target. The third indication, near the 2 o'clock position of the NERD circle, is the missile minimum range, called RMIN. The line inscribing the circle indicates target range, and you want this between RMAX and RMIN to launch the missile. Also on the HUD is a box or diamond that indicates the line of sight to the locked target. A box indicates a friendly target, and a diamond indicates it as a hostile. If you see a large X across the HUD and radar display, your range to the target is less than the minimum range indication. When the target is between RMAX and RMIN, the steering dot is inside the ASE circle and weapon is armed, the shoot cue will appear and you can launch the missile by pulling the trigger on the stick or by pressing the spacebar. When between RNE and RMIN, the shoot indication will flash. Press spacebar to continue. Along the right side of the HUD are 3 lines of information. The top line is an indication of closure velocity, V sub c, and below that is target range in miles. Further down on the right side of the HUD is the timer field. When the locked target is outside the range of the AIM-120 radar seeker, the value will display the time from missile launch at which the AMRAAM seeker will turn on and hunt down the target. This is shown as the time in seconds and then ACT. Once the range of the seeker in the AMRAAM is less than approximately 10 miles, the time changes to time to go until the missile impacts the target. This is displayed as remaining time and then TTG. The ACT and TTG will be in reference to the last AIM-120 launched. When the target range is 15 miles, launch an AMRAAM by pressing and holding the trigger. If the first does not succeed, try again. Splash 1. Go ahead and lock up the target flying towards you and press spacebar. Don't engage it. If you don't see one on the radar, press the up arrow on the radar to increase its display range. Take a look at the air-to-air radar format on the right DDI. You'll note that much of the information on the HUD is duplicated there and includes an ASE circle, shoot cue, steering dot, and range indication as along the azimuth steering line to the target. The locked target has the antenna azimuth line running through it and has its speed as Mach to the left and its altitude to the right. The RMAX, RNE, and RMIN are displayed along the antenna azimuth line. When the AMRAAM is launched, a triangular fly-out symbol appears on the azimuth steering line and travels to the target. Once the missile seeker is active, an A appears below the fly-out symbol. To break a lock, press the undesignated button on the stick or press S. Press spacebar to continue. As noted earlier, you can also use the AMRAAM with no radar lock. Termed visual mode, simply fly to place a target within 10 miles inside the HUD reticle and launch the missile. The AMRAAM will go after the first target it detects, hostile or friendly. Practice using the AIM-120 against the remaining drones and press escape when you wish to end the lesson.